And welcome and thank you for joining us on Rogers TV. Our debate today is in the riding of Orléans. In just a moment, I'll introduce you to our candidates seeking your vote in the February 27th by-election. But first, I'll explain the rules for our debate today. Each of the candidates will be provided 1 minute to give you an opening statement. The order of those statements were drawn at random just before our telecast today. And once the opening statements are complete, we'll proceed into a series of debates and discussions about the important issues in this by-election campaign for Orléans in the province of Ontario. And to start off each section of the discussion, I will direct a question at one of our candidates. That candidate will then have 45 seconds to respond to the question. Then we'll open it up to several minutes of discussion amongst all the candidates. At the end of the debate, we'll go back to the candidate to whom the question was originally directed, and they'll have 30 seconds to wrap up on the topic. We'll move through about 7 or 8 of these different topics that way, and we'll close off our debate with closing statements in reverse order from the opening statements. Let's introduce you to the candidates who are running in the February 27th provincial election in the riding of Orléans. For the Green Party of Ontario, Andrew West. From the Ontario NDP, Manon Perreault. From the Liberal Party of Ontario, Stephen Blais. And Ontario PC Party, Natalie Montgomery.
Hi there.
Well, thank you all for joining us today for today's debate on Rogers TV. We'll begin with opening statements, and you'll have 1 minute. We'll begin with you, Andrew West.
Thank you. About half the people listening to me speak today have voted for a party that they didn't like, often the Liberals, to stop another party from governing. Big media conglomerates like the CBC or Global will tell you that you need to vote strategic, otherwise your vote's wasted. But that's not the case in this by-election. The Conservatives have over 30 seats more than the second-place party, and a couple extra seats isn't going to change that. 2 years ago, Ontario elected Mike Schreiner as our first Green MPP, and since that time, he's been one of the most productive and effective members of Queen's Park. He's worked with other parties to get things done. More Green MPs mean a better plan for healthcare, seniors, education, and for the environment. Don't waste your vote on putting someone who's going to put corporations and their friends' interest ahead of yours. Use this by-election to vote for the future you want, not the future you want to stop.
That's our time. Next, we'll move on to Manon Perreault from the Ontario NDP.
Hi, everyone. I am Manon Perreault. I've lived in Orléans for 35 years, and I'm running as a candidate in this by-election because Orléans deserves a fighter to stand up to this government. Unfortunately, on February 28, Doug Ford will still be Premier of our province. But the people of Orléans have a choice to make. Will we choose someone to sit with Ford and defend his callous guts? Will we choose a member of the Liberal Party, the party that privatized Hydro One and increased all of our bills? Or will we make a new choice this time, the choice to prioritize our children's future with proper education funding? We can choose better health care and dignity for our loved ones. We can make the bold choice of drug and dental coverage for everyone. These are the things that I stand for and the NDP stands for every day as the official opposition. I've spent the last 30 years fighting for social justice and standing up for workers and the most vulnerable. Now I want to stand up for the people of Orléans. Thank you.
Thank you, Manon Perreault. Next up is Ontario Liberal Party candidate Stephen Blais.
Hello, my name is Stephen Blais, and as a community volunteer, school trustee, and city councillor, I've dedicated much of my life to moving Orléans forward. As a school trustee in Orléans, we respected teachers and supported parents and students by expanding access to before and after care programs. We expanded French immersion programs, and we built permanent additions at St. Matthew and Lester B. Pearson High Schools, replacing portables. As City Councillor, I've secured $750 million of infrastructure investments for our community. We expanded Millennium Park with artificial turf and the best splash pad in the city. We widened Trim Road and extended Brian Coburn Boulevard. We built the François Dupuis Centre, the first new pool in Ottawa in 20 years, and we brought Amazon to Carlsbad Springs. If I'm elected your next MPP, I want to upload Highway 174 to the province so that we can build carpool lanes and reduce commute times. We need to plan the next phase of the Mo4 Health Hub to provide better health services to seniors and young families, and we need to grow the green economy for the future. I have a strong track record at the school board and at the city, and I look forward to discussing further with you.
Stephen Blais, thank you. Up next, we have from the Ontario PC Party, Natalie Montgomery.
As a mother, a family health advocate, and a resident of Orleans, I'm happy to be here. Helping students, parents, immigrant, and infertility patients has been my life's passion. It's been a pleasure having many conversations with all of you at the doors. I'm hearing that we're tired of being left behind, forgotten, years of empty promises, and politicians who are abandoning their elected office after less than just 2 years. At the doors, people are talking about health conditions and chronic illnesses and what it's like to travel outside of Orleans for doctor's visits and urgent care. Work-life balance swallowed by slow commute times on a broken LRT and an overburdened 174, leaving us little times for our loved ones. And the uncertainty and disruption in our child's education that's putting us out of pocket for expensive childcare. I am the candidate who can give Orleans a voice in government and the support it needs to improve our quality of life. Natalie Montgomery, your voice, one choice.
And thank you for your opening statements. We're going to move into some debates now on the important topics in this election. And Andrew West from the Green Party will begin with you. You will have 45 seconds to answer the question, and then we'll open it up for debate. Parents are scrambling to find home care for their children who have been affected by the ongoing dispute between teachers and the provincial government. Teachers have been without a contract since August. Do you think education should be an essential service in this province?
I think education is the most important thing that we can do in this province. Teachers are training our future, pure and simple. Now, the Conservatives are reducing class sizes as a way to make backdoor privatization available. If we allow this to continue, we're only going to jeopardize our futures. So the Green Party stands with the teachers. We understand that the Liberals have ran up this huge deficit in the past 10 years, and we have to pay for it somehow. But to sacrifice the future of our children is not the way to go about doing it. Our teachers are vital, and yes, we need to make that essential.
Thank you. We'll open it up to debate now.
As a mother of a 5-year-old boy that goes to public school in our community, I have felt the real consequences of union-led escalation, and I know what it's like to find childcare on short notice. I also know what it's like to teach, having taught at the university level for 10 years. Supports for teachers are an important piece of the puzzle and something I would personally advocate for in order to foster a safe and nurturing learning environment for our children.
I'm quite concerned that Doug Ford has picked a fight with teachers in schools using students as pawns. They're the ones paying for his vendetta. Teachers are fighting for our children's future right now, and like the vast majority of parents, I fully support them. Yesterday, teachers were telling me on the line how glad they were to see that Andrea Horwath has called for Minister Lecce's resignation. Doug Ford needs to cancel the cuts and get back to the bargaining table.
Certainly, as a parent of a young son, the challenges over the last few weeks have been difficult in our household, but they pale in comparison to the challenges our children will face if we allow Doug Ford and the Conservative government to continue to gut education. The Conservative government has continually had a war on teachers, not just in this mandate, but for decades. When you walk the line with the teachers, as I did with the Catholic teachers last week, you hear their passion for education, their passion for the children that they're teaching. I spoke to one teacher at St. Francis of Assisi Elementary School. She's got a class of 27 kids in a 4-5 split. 12 of them have educational plans specific to them. 8 of them have autism. 4 of them have Tourette's. Almost half the class has some form of special requirement, and she has an educational assistant for 70 minutes a day. That's not how we create, that's not how we invest in our future. That's not how we develop our children into the next engineers, the next doctors, the next lawyers.
Did you walk the line with the teachers under the previous Liberal government with all your friends? Together, we're at the mercy of insatiable union leadership. They're never happy with any government, need I remind my opponents, come contract negotiation time.
The fact of the matter is, Stephen, that I can appreciate the fact that you have a child in the system right now and you walk the talk, or you walk the line, not necessarily walk the talk, but you walk the line. But the fact is, we're in this situation right now because of the Liberal Party and the massive debt that they ran up. The fact of the matter is that the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, with all due respect, have had the opportunity to make cost-effective savings for the schools and haven't taken the opportunity to do it. We have 4 school boards in Ontario, 2 French, 2 Catholic. that's costing too much to Ontario taxpayers.
I am always going to stand up and
Ottawa
defend
and
the rights
Ontario.
of
We have
Catholics
4
and
school boards in
Francophones to
Ottawa.
have their own education
we have
system
4 school boards
in Ontario. If the Green Party wants to
But
eliminate
you
Francophone
chronically
education,
underfunded
and
No, wait, no,
education,
stop
that
right
is
there.
That is
No.
irresponsible.
As a typical liberal, you're saying things that you don't understand. All right? Now listen, we're not asking to take away from Francophone. I didn't participate in the Francophone debate because I was not taught proper French as a child. I'm learning French now because that's how important it is to me in the Green Party. We're making a strong push for Francophonie. What I'm talking about is having a discriminatory school of a Catholic school board. That's merging the public and Catholic school boards would save $1.2 to $1.6 billion annually in redundancies. That's money that will go back directly into our schools to have lower class sizes, more teachers dedicated to our students, especially students that have disability issues.
I'm sorry, that is a distraction from the question at hand, which is how we invest in children to create
exactly
the kind of society we want
about.
for our future. We want good doctors and good engineers and good scientists
Stephen,
and
you
good
do that-
artists.
you do that
And
that's
you're
the kind of
government.
education
You don't do that shouting
we
from the
want to
streets,
produce.
Chronically
You can shout from the
underfunded
streets, but you can't
education,
accomplish
like
anything.
the Conservatives are doing now.
As MPP, I
Only
want to talk about
interested in
Orleans in the future. My
Okay,
fellow
we're
candidates here want to
at
talk
our
about
time
the
limit
past.
now. Andrew West, you will have 30 seconds to close out this topic.
The other candidates Stephen just says, focus on the past, other candidates. That's all wrong. They've had so much opportunity to fix the problem and they never have. $1.6 billion back into our students is an important matter to deal with. And Green Party is the only party that's willing to talk about this. Just think about, rather than making cuts and slashes and stuff, proper investment back into the most important resource we have, our children.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our next question. This will be for Manon Parot from the Ontario NDP. People across the province, all sectors of the economy, are feeling impacts of climate change and paying more and associated costs. The current government says a carbon tax is not the only way to fight climate change. Do you think a carbon tax works?
I'm not an expert on the carbon tax, but the NDP does support cutting emissions. If we form government in 2022, the NDP has a plan to make Ontario net zero by 2050, starting by cutting emissions by at least 50% by 2030. It would create 1 million new jobs, adding billions of dollars to the economy. Our Green New Deal includes the largest building retrofit program in the world. We would provide homeowners with rebates and interest-free loans for renovations. In this region, we've already experienced floods and tornadoes. No family should have to evacuate their home year after year because of floodwaters. And no one should be fearful of starting a family or afraid for their children.
It's open to everyone.
BC government has moved to put Ontario on a more sustainable path to address environmental challenges while respecting taxpayers and protecting jobs. I'd like to ask Mr. Blais how he's actually protecting the environment when his LRT can't even move from one station to the next. He heralded this as a great accomplishment that was going to bring environmental benefits to our community. What he's done, and he's let the highest ridership in the city down. And what's happened? We've put more and more cars on the 174, clogging our infrastructure and emitting more gases.
It's unfortunate that the Conservatives continue to attack. It seems that's the only thing they know how to do. They attack teachers, they attack the environment. Now they're attacking me.
Actually, your leader
for standing up for
your
Orleans
wannabe
residents.
leader attacked me just last week, Mr. Del Duca.
I stood up for Orleans
He was
residents.
canvassing with you, I noticed.
Orleans is the only suburban community that will have stage 2, the electric train in stage 2. In terms of the environment, Doug Ford has canceled $231 million worth of projects that were already under construction. That's $231 million
Stephen,
of
once again,
your
you're
money.
getting ahead of yourself.
That's
You can't
down
talk about
the
stage 2
drain.
without addressing the problems that you and your cronies at City Hall created with stage 1.
Well, let's talk
it's
about.
time to take
let's talk
responsibility,
about-
Stephen.
let's
You
talk
don't deserve
about
a promotion.
Let's talk about
Clean up
cronies
the
for
mess
a
you
second.
created.
Doug Ford and his staff hired their cousins, their nephews. They promoted former Conservative candidates to high-level government positions and gave them 4,300% increases in their salary. So if we want to talk about cronies, I think Doug Ford's got a whole office full of them.
Are you telling,
let's talk
Stephen,
about
are
the
you telling,
let's
are
talk
you
about the
telling the
environment.
people of Orleans that
Let's
women
talk
are an
about-
accessory of their husbands?
No,
How dare you?
I'm talking
Shame
about
on
Doug
you.
Ford's cronies.
Shame
And let's
on
talk
you.
about the
Shame
let's
on you,
talk
Stephen.
about the environment for a second. As city councillor, I helped purchase over 200 acres of forest land to protect that forest from being cut down and being developed to bring it in to our tree canopy. LRT is the largest environmental project in the history of the City of Ottawa, and unlike the Conservatives who are threatening to cancel transit projects across Ontario, have cancelled them in Hamilton. Big Conservative Larry O'Brien cancelled the first light rail. Your campaign manager was a senior advisor to Larry O'Brien.
I don't know,
Stephen,
you're pulling rabbits out of a hat here.
Stephen,
there's no deodorant
Orleans.
for desperation. It can smell you a mile away. All right, and when it comes to transit, the City of Ottawa is responsible for it. If the city comes to the province and asks for help, I'm sure the province would be happy to step in. We believe that it's up to your municipal government to manage this. And instead of managing this mess, what are you doing? You're looking for a parachute off a runaway train.
Well, certainly
Good job,
this transition LRT has been more difficult than we anticipated, but let's talk about
More difficult.
Conservatives are talking about canceling.
Well, I'm going to step in because we're getting off the topic here. If you two want to fight, I mean, please take 5 minutes and let us have a nice debate here going on.
Who's fighting for the people of Orleans?
Actually, the Green Party is, and here's why. So the Ford government canceled the cap and trade system. That was by no means a good system because it had fair loopholes that allowed big corporations to trade off carbon offsets, so they wouldn't have to meet their emission targets. What the Green Party, but it was something, and the Ford government scrapped that. They also scrapped 700 clean energy contracts, which cost the province $231 million. The Green Party plan is very simple and very effective and is working out in British Columbia. It's called a fee and dividend. So we put a fee at the carbon, at the source, so you pay that fee at the beginning. However, once a year or quarterly, however it's going to be structured, you will get that money back. It's divided equally amongst all of Ontarians. So you get that rebate back. So the less carbon emissions that you produce yourselves, you have a better benefit because you get more of that carbon, the reduction back.
That
you
sounds
get that
like
offset
a quagmire
back.
to me.
How is that a quagmire?
It just sounds totally confusing. You pay, you get it back. You pay, you get it back.
Exactly, and
What's
the less
point
that
of
you
paying?
use, the more you get back. So I mean, it's just as simple. Like if you're paying for candy, and you get taxed on candy, the less candy you eat, the less cavities you have. Very similar structure.
And what does that do to jobs? What does that do to jobs and local business? Orleans has
the clean sector. The clean sector is the highest growing sector in the economy in the world right now, and Ontario is
That's our time now
for
this. We'll have 30 seconds for Manon Perreault from the Ontario NDP.
The Liberals have let us down and they do it again. But Doug Ford is wasting millions, cancelling green energy deals, even ripped out electric vehicle charging stations. Our children and grandchildren deserve a chance at a future. The Conservatives set the stage for hydro privatization and the Liberals privatized it. Doug Ford has doubled down on the Liberals' hydro boring plan, spending another $5.5 billion of Ontarians' money on a plan that will cost us at least $21 billion more in the future.
Thank you very much. And we'll move on to our next question. This will be for the Ontario Liberal Party, Representative Stephen Blais. Dozens of parents and children with autism have been speaking out in Ontario about the government for delaying its needs-based autism program. The needs-based program will be delayed until 2021, despite being promised to run in April of 2020. How do you address parents when it comes to this topic?
You know, this is one of the most complicated and difficult things to talk to parents about, because we all love our children, and we want to ensure that they have the future that they deserve and the resources that they need to get them there. And unfortunately, this government ran into the China shop like a bull and destroyed all the merchandise. And then they promised a solution, and it's not coming, and it's going to be years and years away. I have spoken to teachers who have many children with autism in their classrooms. They need additional support in the class. Parents need support at home or outside of the classroom as well. And it's our top priority to ensure that we invest in our children.
Thank you. We'll open it up for discussion.
I am an expert in health promotion. I understand the struggles and the health struggles that families are facing, whether it's autism and other learning disabilities such as ADHD with their families. Let me finish, Manon, excuse me. Whether it's other issues that relate to our health and to our well-being. We need somebody to be the voice for Orleans and the voice for families at Queen's Park to talk about these issues. I want to use my voice and I want to fight, and I'm ready to fight for all of you to make sure that Orleans gets its fair share in everything.
In terms of autism parents, the voice for Orleans has actually been the NDP MPP for Ottawa Centre, Joel Arden. He's been fighting along the parents and giving them support to deal with the callous way that the Ford picked a fight with autism parent, and he should have known better than to pick a fight with parents fighting every day to ensure their children can flourish. Last weekend, I had Rhonda and Kate, two autism moms, come with me, knocking on doors for half a day. That's how concerned they are about what this government has done to their children. They need a needs-based long-term therapy and not a one-time cash payment. The Ford government actually is throwing money, bad money, because they're telling parents who are going to get this one-time payment, go buy a trampoline for your
NDP,
kids,
as a member of the NDP, you can't talk about throwing away money. I mean, you just can't. It just it's a non sequitur. I'm really sorry. It just doesn't fit.
You've created a crisis for these parents.
There's no crisis. They're fixing it. The government came into power with very difficult decisions to make.
So
after 15 years of liberal tax and spending, they can't even. They did not balance the budget in 15 years. The deficits were sky high.
That's great that you've had people work on your campaign that have autism. That's amazing. In fact, so have I. I've actually had people come with me door to door. A young man who had autism campaigned for me in a past election, and it was an amazing experience. And the Green Party stands with support for teachers with autism. And again, one of the things that I go back to is that it requires the proper funding, and helping to create that funding would be to merge the public and Catholic school boards. Well, we've already talked a little bit about that. The one thing I just want to address before Stephen speaks is something that really got to me. It was really hard to see. And this is on federal level, so it's not provincial, but it just shows you where party lines are. They had a rally on Parliament Hill about 3 years ago for autism. It was actually put on by a Conservative member of Parliament. And the Liberals were all up on top steps, all there for the photo ops. But when it came time to vote for the legislation in the House, they'd all voted against it. It's a terrible thing for that to happen. We can't play politics with our kids. Let's not do that. I think everyone here probably agrees that this is an important issue.
And that's why
so
our government has doubled the autism budget. They've doubled the autism budget. They're taking time to get this right. The first year in office, they're taking time to get it right, and they're assessing the needs. Yes, they are, Manon. Are you there?
No.
Are you there? Are you shouting from the streets?
I'm talking every day with autism parents. I've been on rallies in front of Lisa McLeod's office with them. I'm actually there on the ground with the people, not up top in my ivory tower.
You're trying to leverage votes from protesters.
Natalie
before
wants
I even decided to run, I was out there. I'm always out there at the grassroots. That's where I come from. I'm always about defending the most vulnerable, the people who need help. That's why I'm running for office, because I'm tired of career politicians who only care about their friends and the developers, and
I'm actually not a career
large
politician.
Corporations.
Manon,
people
I'm sorry, you're sadly
who got
mistaken.
patronage appointments at $140,000. A job that used to be paid $3,000.
So you too believe, along with Councillor Blade, that I'm an accessory of my husband?
No, I believe that the Ford government does not care about the people of Ontario.
Well, if you'd like to speak about my husband's job, you can ask him himself his qualifications.
It's not about that. It's about the money. A job that used to be paid $3,000. That's
will end our discussions.
Maybe you should figure out why.
Maybe
you should figure out
why. It's the priorities of what you do.
Natalie, right now we're going to move on to Stephen. We'll have 30 seconds to close out this topic.
Thank you very much. As Manon said, the callous nature that Doug Ford and his government has approached families with autism is beyond reproach. Ms. Montgomery wants to be a voice in the government. That's a voice that is attacking parents of children with autism, that's taking money out of the system, that is not helping them advance in their development. That's not the voice that Orleans needs at Queen's Park.
Thank you. Stephen Blay from the Ontario Liberal Party. Our next question will be for Natalie Montgomery, the Ontario PC Party. Let's talk about transit, given the current issues surrounding the problem-plagued LRT system. Do you support providing funding to a Phase 3 of light rail that would extend further west to Canada with the issues we've had with not only Phase 1 but also with Phase 2?
I support funding, but it's really important to figure out what's gone wrong with Phase 1. The PC government wants the best transit options for all Ontarians. I have serious concerns about the challenges that our city continues to face with the city's light rail project. Orléans has the highest transit ridership in the city, and my opponent's track record speaks for itself. He's the architect of the LRT as chair of the city's Transit Commission, former chair, and he's looking for that parachute off the broken rails of LRT when he's done nothing to promote our quality of life at home and the environment. The only thing that Mr. Blade deserves is a one-way ticket on the LRT back to City Hall to clean up the disaster that he's trying to avoid.
You know, those are cute taglines, but let's be clear about where we stand on LRT. It's been a difficult transition these last few months, in particular the last 2 weeks. And so what did we do?
2 weeks,
we
actually, Stephen, we're actually talking about months.
Yes.
Right? So you're glossing over, it's actually been, it's not just 2 weeks,
No,
it's
I said
actually
the
been
last-
months. It's a game that people are playing on a daily basis.
Well, you can either
How many trains are going to show up?
You can either listen to the answer or you can talk over me.
But you're making up your own stories in your answers. These are your own stories. These are
Well,
tall tales.
how about you let me finish and we let the residents of Orleans decide for themselves?
Well, I think they've already decided.
It's been a difficult several months, and I said in particular these last few weeks. And what did we do? We brought in the world's leading expert in this kind of problem from England. They've begun diagnosing the problems, and they brought the system from 8 trains up to 13. But let's talk about the future for a moment.
I'm actually confused about something.
When
So
I
you
was-
just said we were doing
when
all
I
of
was-
this.
when
So
I
were you
was
doing
elected,
this at
there
the
was
same
no
time that
plan.
you were campaigning to be
When I was-
MPP?
when I was
So are
elected
you
in
double dipping
2010,
as a city municipal
taken
councillor?
I've taken unpaid
And then the
leave.
next 2 weeks, so you've been
I've
doing both.
taken
Which
an
job are you on, Stephen? Which job are you
When
doing
I was
today?
elected in 2010, there was no plan to extend LRT to Orleans. Everyone said it was impossible. Larry O'Brien had canceled the first plan, and Orleans wasn't part of
Talking
it.
about Larry O'Brien,
When
like
I
you're
got
so
elected,
stuck
there
to
was
that
no
ass.
plan to bring LRT
Let's
to
talk
Orleans.
about you and Jim Watson.
Within 2 years, we had a plan to bring the electric light rail to Orleans.
A plan
It's
that
financed-
involves a
it's
How can it come
financed,
to
and
Orleans?
it's
contract
under
that's
construction
flawed
now.
from the
Go to
beginning.
Blair.
A
How
plan
can it go to Orleans when it can't even go to Blair?
You talk about listening
Have you
to
read
re-
it?
you
Are
talk
you
about
taking?
listening
Have
to
you? Did you
residents,
take
but you
part in
won't
the
even
challenges?
listen to the answer.
Have you taken part in the challenges to get back and forth to City Hall on the LRT
I have ridden the train
when you were
and the
wearing your
bus
councillor hat?
all the time to City Hall. Thank you very much. I've taken a month off without pay in order
Oh,
to
one- right,
in order
1
to
month.
run
Well,
in
you
this
actually
election.
should be
and-
resigning. You should be resigning your council seat if you actually respect the municipal taxpayer. You should be
Okay,
resigning
so-
your seat to seek higher office instead of quitting when the going gets tough.
So let's
That's
talk
the
about
difference. I don't
public
quit. I
transit
work
because
harder.
that's what the question was. Doug Ford has canceled LRT projects in Hamilton, and by the sounds of it, Conservatives are talking about what they might do here in Ottawa.
No, nobody's actually
can
talking
we
about
talk-
that
can
except
we
you.
talk
Maybe
about
you
the
actually think
people-
it should be cancelled.
Can
Maybe
we-
that would be your parachute.
Can we talk about the people of Orleans who are not using the public transit because it's not working and because they can't get to work on time? If we're serious about addressing climate change, we need to get people out of their vehicles. But families in Orleans are not taking the public transit. They're driving their vehicles.
Absolutely.
We see it on the road every day. And that's because it's not reliable, it's not affordable, and because who can afford an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half at noon when they have to go pick up their children at daycare? We need solutions, we need proper funding, and the whole process was flawed from the start. You pushed for this to be a P3, and that's the problem with it. You pushed for this contract to go to SNC-Lavalin, and
There you
we
go.
all know.
You won't even-
Sorry,
you won't even
I've got a
answer
minute left, but all I can do really is echo your
No, it's not.
words, is because
No, it's not.
first
The
off,
deliberations are
Jack
not.
working with SC Lavalin, problem number 1. But problem number 2 is actually the planning of the AOC transport altogether. I have no doubt that you have had these challenges and you've done your best to deal with them, and stuff comes up. That's just the way that construction is. But the planning is flawed to begin with. As the NDP manual says, that it's difficult to get around Orleans it's difficult to get around on either side of the ends of Canada if you don't have a car. And if you want to take public transit, sometimes the buses aren't there just to get you to the train. And then you have to get to the train, you have
The
to take a
buses are
direct
busy
bus,
acting
and you have
as
to
trains.
change the bus again. I mean, I don't think that they should have stopped the 95s because they actually keep running past the distance. So why would people have to take a train? This is a complaint that I've often heard. We take a train out to the ends of the train station, then we have to transfer a bus. It's added so much to our commute time.
In every
Andrew,
other
thank you.
jurisdiction.
We can wrap up now with Natalie
I
Montgomery in 30
maintain that
seconds.
the little time that we have left for our families has been swallowed by long, unpredictable commutes. Furthermore, as a result, the increase in the number of cars that now line the 174 on a regular basis are cause for environmental and quality of life concerns. While this is a municipally led project, the province will offer support where necessary if called upon by our municipal counterparts.
Thank you. And that was Natalie Montgomery from the Ontario PC Party. Our next question will be for Andrew West of the Green Party of Ontario. Around 1.4 million Ontario residents are over the age of 85. What is your party's plan, to manage the needs of this group of people who really need the care in your riding and across the province?
The population of Ontario is aging, and these seniors need our help. And part of the problem with the backlog in the hospitals is the lack of hospital beds. We want to do everything we can to make sure seniors stay in their own homes, and that requires having the proper funding model to make sure that they not only can they afford to keep their homes, afford to pay the taxes on their homes, but also can afford to get the resources that they need to stay there, whether that be having more localized nurse practitioner clinics in neighborhoods so they don't have to travel so far to hospitals, or rather be able to have the service available to them when needed.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll open it up for discussion.
Seniors in Orleans are not getting the care they need. Many are waiting for a home in long-term care. Wait lists are extremely long and the costs are exorbitant. And in too many long-term care homes, seniors are not getting the care they need or the attention they deserve. Residents are left in bed for 18 hours at a time and they face lengthy waits for help to bathe and change clothes. We need a minimum care standard of at least 4 hours per day per resident. Our seniors deserve care that treats them with respect and dignity. And couples who have spent their entire lives together should never be separated by a system that doesn't work for them. We also need to expand the not-for-profit sector so that funding goes to patient care instead of profit. The NDP and I will continue to demand that Ford reverse the long-term care cuts to ensure vulnerable seniors stay safe.
And I just want to address something real quick, just on the NDP, just to follow up on the NDP's comment.
So responsible for
something that the NDP and the Green have in common is wanting universal pharmacare. But where we disagree is actually on the level of how it's put into effect. As far as I understand, the NDP wants it put on a provincial level. We think that even though Ontario has the highest population in the country, it's best and most cost-effective to have that on a federal level. So as a Green Party member of provincial parliament, I will work with the federal government to make sure that pharmacare is brought across for the entire country.
Look, every Ontarian deserves to grow old with dignity, and Orleans is no exception to the phenomenon that we've described. We are in both a growing community with young families, but an aging community as well. And that's why the City of Ottawa has invested in additional public health dollars and additional...
You can't talk about the City of Ottawa, you need to be talking about the province.
Well, if you want to use my record against me, I'll use my record to support me.
Well,
we've invested in long-term...
We've invested in long-term... While they were in the office for 15 years.
We've invested in long-term care, in long-term housing supports. We've encouraged things like the Mulfor Health Hub by changing the zoning, by building the road infrastructure, by putting in the waters and the sewers. The Liberal Party has always been committed to long-term care for our senior communities.
I need to remind viewers, you've all had a chance now, I need to remind viewers that the Liberal government propped up by the NDP failed to address the number of long-term care beds and needs of Ontario seniors. They left a giant gaping hole between the number of beds and the demand for them. The Ontario PC government has a clear view of where things need to improve, and they are acting swiftly to address those gaps.
Yeah, 21 beds since they came into office. That's addressing the situation.
I think you have your numbers wrong again, Manon.
In the 15 years
go back to the drawing board.
In the 15 years of the last Liberal government, there was 13,500 long-term care beds established. And Manon is right, the Conservatives have done barely anything in the almost 2 years since they've been elected. We need to keep seniors in their communities. That includes building long-term care facilities. That includes supportive facilities. That includes support at home. That includes recreational options so that seniors can come together and have
for low-income seniors so that they can get free access to the dental care that they so desperately need. So again, I mean, I feel like there's just this gross over-exaggeration about what our government is or isn't doing. They're doing their best, and they're delivering for seniors. And the seniors in our community need a voice in Orleans.
If anybody wants to see what the Ford government is doing, go online and check out the Ford tracker. It's about 12 pages point form of all the cuts they've made since they come
There's been
into
no
office.
cuts to health,
It's
600
callous.
million,
It's a
600
callous
million in health.
government that's hurting
No, it's
families
not
in
callous.
Ontario.
In Orleans, we need more supports for seniors. That's why I've committed to start planning the second phase of the Mo4 Health Hub at the corner of Brian Coburn and Mayor Bleu on day one, so that the Mo4 can work towards providing better services for seniors.
Who are you going to plan that with? You can't even sit on the health committee as a member of an unrecognized party if you were to be
And that will bring
successful.
us to the end of that
Do
discussion.
the people of Orleans know that?
Andrew West will have 30 seconds to wrap up the topic.
So one of the last things Stevens mentioned was the Orleans Health Hub, which is extremely important, but it was a 10-year delay under the Liberals that there was no action done. To the Conservatives' credit, they actually got that going, but they're offloading to cost to municipalities, so they have to pay 30% of healthcare costs in the future. The other thing that wasn't really addressed was between the Liberal government and the Conservatives, they've only put 1% of the budget, the healthcare budget, towards preventative medicine. That needs to change to help seniors.
Thank you, Andrew. And Manon Perreault, affordable housing, affordability. I mean, it's an issue throughout Ontario, across our nation, especially in our communities. How can we create more affordable housing in our community?
Well, housing affordability has reached crisis level after 15 long years under the Liberals. Too many families are struggling with skyrocketing rents and are seeing the dream of home ownership slip further and further away. Doug Ford made things even worse by taking away rent control from more people than making it easier for landlords to evict tenants. Families deserve better than to worry about how they will afford to keep a roof over their heads. Poverty and homelessness are the hidden face of Orleans. More and more people are forced to resort to food banks. Last week, I attended the rally outside City Hall in support of Councillor McKenney's motion to declare a housing emergency in Ottawa. I spoke to her immediately before the rally, and she said that as of the night before, Councillor Blais and the Mayor weren't on board.
Okay,
only the massive turnout likely convinced them to support the motion.
Well, since you raised Councillor McKenney's motion, I supported it, and at no time did I speak against it. I have worked as City Councillor to increase affordable housing options in the east end of the city with Cumberland Housing, with Habitat for Humanity, and the city has put a record investment into affordable housing the last number of years. Perhaps not enough, perhaps we haven't solved all the problems, but that's why we've committed just recently to a 10-year homelessness and affordable housing plan. There are ways to both invest in social housing for those who need assistance and a hand up to be housed, and then there's also ways to reduce the overall cost of housing so that home ownership becomes more affordable. And that's what we need to focus on, both things at the same time. Unfortunately, we've seen very little movement out of the provincial government in the last 2 years. They're more focused on giving tax exemptions and grants to wineries in Niagara Falls.
Stephen, again, you're wrong. They're very focused on the quality of life and helping young couples and young Ontarians get ahead.
Name
As an
one
expert,
provincial investment in Orleans since you've been elected.
the health hub. The health hub, the shovels have gone in the ground. After 15 years of waiting under the previous Liberal government and your friend Marie-France, it never happened. And guess what? It took 1 year. It took 1 year for Minister Elliott to come into our community and get shovels in that ground. As an expert in infertility supports, I'm very concerned about the fact that houses in our province continue to become more and more affordable for couples. And what's happening? They're waiting. They're waiting to start families because they're waiting to buy homes. They're waiting for job stability. We need to look at all these problems as a whole, not just in silos, as my opponents like to do. Housing, local economy, health supports. When people of Orleans see that government is supporting them and is in their favor, more businesses will invest here.
Well, to the
there will be more housing choices available to them.
To the Liberals'
we will
credit,
be having more families.
Because the Green Party likes to give credit where credit's due. To the Liberals' credit, they actually brought in policy shortly before they left office to make sure that foreign ownership of Toronto homes, particularly in Toronto, was restricted so that they could prevent some of the skyrocketing rent increases that was going on. But the problem is that it was just all Band-Aid fixes. The Green Party wants to make sure that every fifth home or every fifth new condo is affordable, requiring developments to make sure that that's in their development plan. The other thing that, again, credit where credit's due, that at least the Liberals attempted to do was bring in a program for a guaranteed livable income. This is the thing that will help people afford their homes more, if not their homes, as well as just food, heat, and hydro. It was the conservatives that canceled that job. And studies show that if they have a guaranteed livable income, more people are likely to go back to school, get the education that they need to get a proper job. So it's counterproductive to have canceled the guaranteed livable income program, because that's actually a way that people can have the security that they need to make sure that they have the food.
It's not a handout. They want a handout.
It's not a handout.
They want a leg up. They don't need a handout.
Help making sure that people have a home to live in, food to eat, heat to heat their home. That's not a handout. That's common sense. And I'm shocked that anyone on this panel just can't see that.
I've worked with organizations like Cumberland Housing. I've worked with organizations like Habitat for Humanity. I've stood in front of crowds of 300 and 400 people who are upset about social or affordable housing coming into their neighborhood, and I've defended those organizations and defending that investment, because some people do need a hand up.
And I can appreciate some of the things that you've said,
we have to continue to invest to ensure that people aren't living on the streets, to ensure that they have a place to sleep at night, because if they don't have a place to sleep at night, they're not going to do very well at their job that they have now.
But you've also said that along the LRT that you want to develop that for commercial use. That's actually the area that needs to be developed for low-income housing, because people need access to get to the public transit so they can get to their jobs.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll close out the topic with Manon. You'll have 30 seconds.
We are in a crisis, and there's a critical shortage of housing. We need a mental health and addiction strategy, because there's a shortage of supportive housing as well. The wait lists for mental health services are outrageously young. We have an opioid crisis. All these things contribute to the lack of housing. And also, you talk about jobs, but we don't need jobs at minimum wage.
And thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to Stephen Blais, Ontario Liberal Party. We'll pick up on mental illness. 1 in 5 Ontario residents struggling with some form of mental illness. What can be done to provide help to these people and to their families?
Well, certainly, like all aspects of the education or the healthcare system, it needs more investment, not less. And that's why I was very disappointed when the Conservative government took $200 million out of mental health services almost the moment that they were elected. We need to continue to invest in these services for the entire age group of our demographic, for kids, for adults, and for seniors. Mental health leads to homelessness, it leads to drug addiction, it leads to it leads to criminality in some cases, and we need to treat it like the disease that it is by providing the attention, the doctors, the resources that these members of our society need to cope with their disease.
I've had the pleasure of developing and testing a mental health literacy program for teachers to deliver to their students, and for them to work together on understanding and enhancing mental health literacy. That was a really great example of an initiative that could actually work. Our government has come up with the highest investment in mental health strategies of any other government in previous history. And we believe that we need to increase supports for people that are suffering from mental illness. But not only that, we need to create and destigmatize mental health and create an environment of literacy where people are supporting each other, where people feel free to be able to talk about their experiences and have that support. The total investment has been over $1.8 billion in over 10 years in the last budget. So I invite you to get your figures straight before you start lying to the people of Orleans again.
Well, one of the figures is that the Conservatives is downloading 30% of their health budget to the municipalities.
Speaking about municipal governments actually do have to do work.
Yes, but they have stretched thin as it is. Let's talk about affordable housing real quick.
But municipal government does have to do work.
Let's talk about affordable housing just real quick on that, because a lot of people who require affordable housing have mental illness. And I guarantee you, I've seen the studies, it is cheaper to create affordable housing than it is to have someone sleep the night in a hospital or in jail. Now, when you download services, as the Liberals have done previously and the Conservatives have done previously, down to the municipalities, they have no more budget to move. I mean, Stephen, hopefully you can talk to this more than anybody. It's impossible for them to pull blood out of the stone. They can't afford it. You can't expect to say that we need to do this issue and then take away the proper resources for that to get done.
It's been invested.
It hasn't.
We have a Minister of Mental Health.
We need $4.1 billion over 4 years spent on mental health issues.
Oh, so did you just do, are you doing the math? Are we doing the same math?
What my math is actually finding ways to actually pay for this stuff, not offloading it
well,
to
again,
different
this is a
jurisdictions.
consensus building issue between governments.
But that's
It's a
not, you're not consensus
issue.
building.
It is a consensus building issue.
The
It's a
municipality, the
problem
office of
in
municipality,
Canada.
I don't
It's a
think
problem
if the
in
mayors
Canada.
of the
It's a problem in provinces.
I don't
It's a
think the
problem in
mayors of the
cities.
municipalities would appreciate the fact that these services are being downloaded. So it has to, so it's them that has to deal with this issue. These are
because
people.
many of them don't want to
These are
work.
people. We can't just be turning our
I
backs
can't
on
believe
people.
that the
We
Conservative
need to
Party
have
just said that people
yes.
with mental illness don't want to work.
No, I'm actually
Every
talking
person
about
I
city
know with
councillors,
mental
Stephen.
illness,
Stephen, I'm
is trying
talking
to
about
get-
city
is
councillors.
trying to
Don't
get
use my
healthy.
words against me.
The Conservative government is treating people like the widgets on an abacus, moving them left and right to try to figure out how they're going to keep their promises. Doug Ford is going to add $44 billion worth of debt to the provincial debt by the end of his term, all while cutting services to mental health, cutting services to education, and cutting services to the Francophonie. In perfect fairness, the Conservatives don't have a leg to stand on in this regard.
You know
Yeah,
what?
but Stephen,
as a
Sorry,
doctoral
Stephen,
candidate in public health,
that's easy for you to say, the Liberals to say in opposition, but everyone, please remember, it was just 2 years ago that the organization Concerned Ontario Doctors were chastising the Liberal government for their health cuts and all the mismanagement that was going on. And they were telling people in the last election to think carefully about your vote. So it's easy for the Liberals to say, oh yeah, no, we'll do that. But the proof isn't there. Listen to our doctors. Our doctors are saying, don't listen to the Liberals. Don't listen to the Conservatives. I suggest you listen to the Greens.
Listen to the frontline workers.
Which is what the Greens are doing. That's exactly what I said. We're listening to but very good point. We are.
easier said than done with one person.
Oh, great. Thank you for mentioning that so much. In the past 2 years, whose time am I taking up
And
here?
we're out of time now. It's Stephen Blais, 30 seconds.
Okay.
Close up.
Thank you very much. Mental illness is a challenge that we're facing, and it's a challenge that everyone needs to learn more about. We have made strides as a society over the last number of years to reduce the stigma, and certainly more work needs to be done. We cannot treat mental illness in healthcare like a calculator or just dollars and cents on a page. The drastic cuts to healthcare that the Ford government have introduced are not going to help people with their healthcare needs.
And thank you. Natalie Montgomery, Ontario PC Party, this question will be for you. Let's talk about energy, specifically energy costs. What has your party done to help lower electricity bills?
The first thing our party done, and I'm actually very proud of it, is they got rid of those green energy contracts. We were paying more for wind and solar energy that were only making up 10% of the supply mix for our province. So every day, households have been telling me about looking at their energy bill to see that they're paying more for green energy. They were paying more for green energy than they were actually getting. That's absolutely not the way to do it. Under the previous Liberal governments, we had a premier under McGuinty for political expediency. He was saying, we're going to get rid of coal by this date. It's going to happen on this date. And what did he do? He created a system that was a complete quagmire. It was a dog's breakfast in terms of the supply mix. And he started giving all these feed-in tariff contracts to people. And guess what? These feed-in tariff contracts were hugely expensive and not delivering.
Thank you.
Doug Ford continues to mislead Ontarians about the seriousness of climate change because he doesn't have a plan to address emissions. Within months, if not weeks of being elected, he canceled the green program for vehicles, and he's taken $231 million in canceling projects that were underway. That's money down the tube. That's money for lawyers and consultants just ripped away from being able to invest in the other parts of the economy.
Why would we pay for
You
something
talk
that's
about-
not
Why don't we
you
go
talk-
back
you
to
talk about
hydro, which was
eliminating-
the question, and the Liberals' records on hydro, selling off our wealth, public wealth. I'm tired of the rich, stealing our public wealth from us.
And why don't we talk about the
And,
gas plant
You know, that
contracts? Remember those?
caused 300% rate increase for people. Why should families have to do their laundry in the middle of the night or be afraid to cook for their kids at lunch? Hydro is in a luxury. It shouldn't be priced like it is.
Well, so I think the residents of Orleans want to hear what one of the four of us is going to do for the residents of Orleans. So let's talk about what I've
What
done
are you
for.
going to be
Well, let's
able
talk-
to do without party status? At least the NDP is the official opposition and actually standing firm for Ontario families,
By that-
which includes Orleans families,
So
and
just on
fighting
that real
against
quick,
the
'cause I'm-
callous
so just on that real
cuts of the
quick, 'cause
Ford government.
I'm going to talk about energy because this is a very important issue, but just talk about which candidate can actually get stuff done. Just to build off of Ms. Montgomery's point there, just at the end of there. What can one member of the Green Party do? What can the Green Party do with just one member? I'll tell you. The Green Party is the only other party in this Conservative majority government to get legislation passed. Not the Liberals, not the NDP. The only party to ever do it is the Green. And if Ms. Montgomery says, well, I'll be a member of the government, I'll be able to say what's going on. Not a chance. Everyone knows Doug Ford runs a tight ship. It's his way or the highway. Your voice would just be lost. You won't be speaking up for the people of Orleans. You will be Doug Ford's echo. And the Liberals and the NDP have got nothing done except squawk in the last 2 years. It was Mike Schreiner, the Green Party, the only other party to get legislation passed in the past 2 years. Now, with respect to energy, yes, the Green Energy Act had its flaws, but it wasn't green energy. It was how it was implemented. It was the Liberal government who brought in these contracts and served them off. Instead of giving them to local community members, which it was originally designed to do, they sold these contracts off to their corporate friends who only look out for getting a profit instead of having these local communities make energy. The real problem is that we're still relying too much on nuclear power. The Darlington power plant is set to be retrofit, and it's going to cost about $13 to $32 billion to retrofit it. We need to move away off of nuclear power. Just closing Pickering will allow us to save on costs that we can subtract,
so
we can reduce,
how much should the people of Orleans be paying on their bill?
Which we can, well then our hydro rates will be reduced because we can take, in the meantime, as we transition to solar power, which is by far the most cost-effective power source right now that was available, we transition to hydropower from Quebec. That's it's a win-win. It's best for the environment, and it's best for your pocketbooks.
And so in real life, let's talk about achievements. When I was elected to council, I promised to take advantage of one of the city's immense resources, which is our buildings and our rooftops. And we implemented a rooftop solar program. A very good example of it is in Orleans on the François Dupuis Center. We are generating an enormous amount of clean electricity off of rooftop solar. We facilitated private solar farms across rural Ottawa.
That's a great city councilor thing, but you're getting yourself into a Liberal government that has contracts with this industry. It's not the same thing.
You might not think that experience matters, but I do. And I think the residents of Orleans want someone who can get things done and has a track record.
The Liberal Party is not getting things done. I'm sorry to tell you that. You're delusional if you think that's
for the residents in Cumberland? The divide between the residents that are serviced between Hydro Ottawa and Hydro One. Do you know the difference in their bills?
To the end of the discussion, but
have
Natalie,
you seen it?
You'll have 30 seconds to wrap up this topic.
We have a government that is supportive of having a good climate change plan, clean energy, but energy that works, energy that's affordable, and energy that's going to not impact the bottom line of Orleans residents. We have to think about the fact that when we have exorbitant bills, what that's doing to businesses, how that's galvanizing communities, and what those residual effects may be.
Thank you very much. All right, we're at this point now of our closing statements, and they will begin in reverse order from our opening statements. So we will begin with Natalie Montgomery from the Ontario PC Party. You have 1 minute.
To the people of Orleans, thank you for listening today. It's clear from our discussion that there is a lot at stake in this by-election. In sum, the health of Orleans residents and our quality of life as a whole is what matters. I'm the candidate who can give Orleans a voice in government and the support it needs in order to take our community where it needs to go. The alternative is leaving Orleans stuck in the status quo with someone who's yelling from the streets with zero influence in government. A vote for me ensures that Orleans gets its fair share. Let's get Orleans back on track, not off the rails, with my opponent. Natalie Montgomery, your voice, one choice.
Thank you. We'll move next to the Ontario Liberal Party representative, Stephen Blais.
As a community association president, school trustee, and a city councillor, I have a long track record of working to make Orleans families better off. We need an MPP who's going to say yes to uploading Highway 174, including adding carpool lanes. We need an MPP who's going to say yes to smaller class sizes, higher test scores, respecting teachers, and replacing portables with new schools. An MPP who's going to say yes to respecting our neighbors, friends, and family in the Francophone community. Yes to a stronger environment and building the green economy of the future. And yes to beginning the process to expand the Orleans Health Hub to serve our growing community of young families and seniors. And yes to fiscal responsibility to ensure all levels of government can invest in infrastructure in Orleans. It's time to move Orleans forward. For more information, visit my website, stephenblais.com. Thank you.
And now we'll move to our closing statement from the Ontario NDP candidate, Manon Parot.
Many families are feeling the pain from Doug Ford's callous cuts. The NDP is leading the fight against these cuts, and we want Orleans families to send a message to Ford by joining the fight. Orleans is very traditional Liberal riding, but just re-electing Liberals won't send Ford a message. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and hope for a different result. The Liberals cut and froze hospital funding too. The Liberals hurt kids by putting teachers on the picket lines too. We have an important choice to make on February 27, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you in the coming weeks about how we move forward together. I hope I can count on your support to protect our public services and ensure no one is left behind. We need an MPP who will be accessible, who will listen to residents, consult with them, and defend their interests, not the ones of developers and large corporations.
And we'll finish off with our Green Party of Ontario candidate, Andrew West.
Thank you. I've already said a lot of what I wanted to say in my closing already, so I'm actually just going to wing this and speak from the heart. And first, I want to say that if you saw 4 people here that seem to be at their worst, well, I apologize, at least for my part. I always think that these debates, I'm going to be as civil as possible and try to bring in issues, try to show you some positivity. But the format itself just creates this system where you just got to be yelling and screaming at each other. That's not what people want. I understand why people are turned off by politics after seeing displays like this. Let me assure you that I am out here to listen to the people of Orleans. I am out here to make sure that you have the best future possible. That's my goal. You don't have to vote strategic in this election. Vote for the one party who's actually got things done, with the exception of the Conservatives, in this past legislation. If you're progressive, you don't have to vote Liberal or Conservative. You can vote Green. If you vote with your heart and your head, you'll vote Green. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you to all of our candidates for participating in the debate for Orleans. The by-election will take place on February 27th. Good luck to all of you. And thank you for watching.